Hey there, writers. Today's video is a somewhat desperate attempt from me to convince you not to just write whatever you feel like, whatever you're immediately inspired by, but to give it just that little bit more thought. If you haven't been to my channel before, my name is Emma and I write contemporary romance and I'm based in the UK. Right, I hate to break it to you, but not many readers are going to buy a bizarre 150,000 word rambling sci fi romance thriller detective story based on a dream that you had. And I can't imagine that many agents and publishers will be fighting over it either. I appreciate that this sounds harsh, and I don't mean that you have to completely abandon any hope of writing whatever you want. If you feel you have a story that you need to write, please write it. But be aware that unless you take certain things into consideration, you are not going to be making a fortune from that manuscript. It comes down to what you want to achieve from your writing. If your writing is a hobby which brings you joy and your focus is not on selling books and making money, then fantastic. Good on you. Not everything needs to be monetized and hustled. Please feel free to completely ignore this video. However, stick around if you'd like to build a readership, generate income from your books, and even land an agent or a publishing deal. Passion and personal expression are and should be at the heart of all great writing. However, aspiring authors, especially those aiming for traditional publication, can't afford to ignore external factors like market demands, audience expectations, and industry realities. Here's why simply writing whatever you want without taking these things into account can hinder your chances of getting published. Firstly, commercial viability and market fit. Publishers are businesses, not charities. They usually know the type of books they want to sign and prioritize manuscripts with strong sales potential, which means your work needs to align with current trends, genres, or reader interests to stand out in the very, very crowded market. If you write something too experimental, niche, or out of sync with what's selling, such as a genre bending story that doesn't fit neatly into categories like YA fantasy or cozy crime, it may be deemed unsellable, even if it's brilliant. Agents and editors often have to reject work that's fantastic but lacks broad appeal because they need to justify investment in editing, marketing, and distribution. Only a tiny fraction of submissions get picked up, and it's not random at all. It's completely based on both merit and marketability. Next, we have audience expectations and genre conventions. Readers come to books with preconceived ideas, especially in popular genres. If your story subverts expectations too radically without building on familiar elements, such as a romance novel without a happily ever after or a thriller without suspenseful pacing, it might confuse or disappoint potential readers, making publishers wary. Writing solely for yourself risks creating something that's very personally fulfilling but doesn't resonate with a wider audience, which is crucial for building buzz, reviews, and sales. Thirdly, I think that you have a risk of burnout and discouragement. Focusing purely on personal whims without publication goals in mind can lead to frustration when reality hits. Rejections, revisions, and the need to compromise will come as a surprise. Many writers start with grand ideas but quit because they don't anticipate the discipline required, like consistent writing routines or seeking constructive feedback. True writers write because they must, but if your end game is publication, treating it like a craft with rules increases your odds greatly. That said, this doesn't mean abandoning your voice. Many successful authors recommend writing first drafts freely for authenticity, then editing the second draft with market awareness in mind. Personally, I don't like this idea, but that's because I like to know exactly what I'm doing before I sit down to write, and I know my genre and reader expectations pretty well at this point. I've written a fair few contemporary romances now. If traditional publishing feels too constraining, self publishing or indie routes offer more freedom, but you still have to be able to find those readers, which is tough if your book doesn't fit into Amazon's categories, making it even harder for readers to discover you than it already is with the market being so saturated. Ultimately, you can write whatever you want. It's your book being created by your mind. But if you want your book to be successful, you need to take account of what publishers, agents, and readers want and expect. So study the genre you want to write. Understand what readers expect from it, like how long your book should be, the usual point of view the genre is told in, the popular tropes. Find out what works for the type of book you want to write, and then use this information in your own project. This doesn't mean that you can't be creative, but the guidelines that you set will mean you'll hopefully end up with a story which is both marketable and enjoyable for readers. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this video today. I do hope that it's been helpful. If it has, please make sure that you boop that like button and subscribe if you're not already, because we have a lot of fun on this channel, and I will catch you in the next one.